Hello and welcome. This is Lisa Waring of Full Moon Wares. Thank you so much for joining me and crafting along with my Let's Make Spun Cotton Hearts tutorial. In this video, you will learn how to create your own charming and nostalgic antique-inspired hearts, which can be used as jewelry, ornaments, or as a token of love and endearment to gift to someone special. Before we get started, I wanted to show you the supplies kit that I put together to accompany this tutorial. Each item in this kit has been specially sourced by me for this project. The supplies kit includes everything that you need to make at least 6 heart charms or pins, along with some extra materials. You can find this kit, as well as my other kits and one-of-a-kind pieces, in my shop at fullmoonwares.bigcartel.com. I've also included the link in my video notes. Now I'm going to walk you through the contents of the kit, and I'll start with the photo card, which features an image of 2 of the hearts that I've made in the past using the same materials in the kit. So this can give you a good idea of what your finished hearts could look like. Under that is a muslin storage pouch, and when you got the kit, inside of the pouch is some white cotton fill. So this is a cotton that's typically used for something like filling a pillow or a stuffed animal, but it also works really well for spun cotton. It's 100% cotton that's cleaned and combed. Under that is something that you'll all be familiar with. It's cotton swabs. So these are pure cotton with a paper stick. On this side, we have 4 sheets of 32 different quotes that you can choose from to create the banners for your hearts. The quotes are printed on linen paper, and there is a cutting guideline that's lightly printed on there as well to make it easier to cut them out. Under that, we have a piece of cotton felt, which is the material that we'll be using to create the banners. Some of the different embellishments that are in the kit that you can use to decorate your hearts are this beautiful piece of hand-dyed silk ribbon that I dyed for the hearts. This was wrapped around the outside of the kit along with this piece of gold cord. On the cardstock here, you have some antique gold floss for hanging your hearts and some antique metallic trim for decorating the hearts as well. Below that are some brass skeleton key charms that you can use if you like. These are really cute. And next to that are the pin blanks. So you can use these if you'd like to make your hearts into pins. The last thing in the kit is the gel super glue. That's everything that comes with the kit. And next, I'm going to talk about some of the tools and supplies that you'll need to complete the project. Now I'm going to talk about some of the tools and supplies that you'll need to have on hand to complete the project. On this tray in the middle here, I have 2 pairs of scissors. I have a large pair of fabric scissors for cutting the cotton felt and a smaller pair of embroidery scissors for cutting some of the metallic threads and ribbon. You'll also need a pair of wire cutters. This is a 6-inch wire cutter, but you could use any size that you have. We will be needing to make several measurements for this project, so I just have a simple 12-inch ruler. Next to that, I have 3 different types of glue, and I'll start with this here, which is just white glue. The glue that I use is just Elmer's glue. It's also called school glue or PVA glue. So this is the white glue directly out of the bottle, and you'll also use this same glue to create your glue wash. Before going on to the next step, you'll need to make a glue wash. And the way that I like to make my glue wash is to put 1 part of white glue and 4 parts of warm or hot water into a little jar like this. Put the lid on nice and tight and give it a shake. You'll want to shake it long enough so you have a nice, even consistency to your glue wash and no clumps of glue. Inside the glue wash, I have a few different types of brushes that I like to use for applying it. So these are some filbert tip brushes. Filbert tip are my favorite brushes to work with, and this is a wide, flat tip with rounded corners. This is a number 11 and a number 12 filbert tip brush. Another brush that I like to use for spun cotton is a fan brush, and this has a really nice light touch, so it does work well. The last type of glue that I have is a matte sealant, and the one that I'm using is Mod Podge. We're going to need this to seal the quotes on the banners. On this tray here, you'll notice that I've put down a piece of parchment paper, and this is an oven safe enamel tray. So, this is what I'm going to be using as my drying tray. You will need to dry your pieces between some of the steps. So, the way that I like to do that is just to use my kitchen oven set at 200 degrees, and I put them on this piece of parchment paper so they don't stick. On this tray, I have some more filbert tip brushes that are kind of a larger size. Again, we have a 9 and a 10. You really don't need to do any detailed painting, so you don't need a small brush. You'll also need to supply paint for the project. So, the paint that I like to use and what I'll be using today is watercolor. This is just a simple watercolor set with 24 different colors. But for this project, you really only need one color. And the color I'm going to be working with today is red. You could make your hearts whatever color you like, depending on what paint you have or what look you're going for. And if you don't have watercolor, acrylic paint works just fine for this as well. Also, on this tray, I have a graphing pencil that I like to use to mark out the measurements. You'll just want to have some type of nice sharp pencil. It could be any type of pencil, but I like to use these because they have a really fine tip. The last thing on the tray is a little pincushion that I made with one of the heart charms. And this is just another way that you can use them. But you'll see that I have some sewing pins here, and these aren't absolutely necessary for the project, but you'll see later on that they're really useful and they make it a lot easier to do some of the things that we're going to do. And if you do want to attach a hanger or any of the charms to your heart, then you'll need to have a sewing needle as well. That's everything that you'll need to complete the project. Now let's get started. This is step one, and in this step, we'll be making the armatures for the hearts. For this step, we're going to need the cotton swabs. So, this is sort of a surprising method that I came up with when I was developing this project. I was spinning them initially with cotton sliver and pipe cleaners, and then I realized what I was making looked almost exactly like Q-tips. So I decided to go ahead and try it with Q-tips, and it ended up working out really well. You can see here what we'll be doing is cutting one end of the Q-tip off and gluing it basically to the other end. But if I put it on top, this is one of the hearts that I've done and covered with cotton. It's not painted yet, but I thought it would be a good visual. You can see that one end of the Q-tip is there and then the other end is there. So this turns out to be a really great shape for making hearts. And I'm going to show you what they look like at the end of the step. So we'll be making something like this. And I do want to point out that you can see that these are kind of a wide V. This will make a larger heart. If you look on this little plate here, I have a couple different sizes, and they're all made with Q-tips. The smaller hearts are made with the Q-tip ends a little bit closer together. And if you want to make your heart a little bit bigger, I'll start with like a wider V. So there's a couple different outcomes that you can have with this same armature at the beginning. All right, and to make these, it's really simple. You're going to need your super glue. You move that out of the way. And to open the super glue, all you need to do is put the lid on. You do not want to squeeze the tube. If you're squeezing the tube when you put the lid on and twist, the glue is going to come out everywhere. So all you need to do is put the lid on and give it a twist like that. And now it should be open. And I like to keep my super glue on a little plate because I do like to squeeze out a little bit at a time to work with for this project. So that's what I'm going to do now. It's going to get a little bit of the super glue gel out and get it ready there. Okay. I'm just going to keep that there. It might keep oozing out, but that's totally fine. So the next thing that you'll need is the wire cutters, and pick up a Q-tip, and you'll notice sometimes that one end is a little bit thinner than the other end. I try to pick two ends that match up in thickness. So this one here, they look pretty uniform on either end. And you'll need the wire cutter. If you like, you could mark this with a pencil. If you're not comfortable just going ahead and cutting it. And you're going to cut it on an angle like this, right at the end where the cotton meets the stick. And these are Q-tips. They're 100% cotton, and the stick is paper. You don't want to use the Q-tips with the plastic sticks for this project because we are going to dry them in the oven, and if you use the plastic ones, it will melt. So look for the Q-tips that are either paper or wood here, and either of those will work. And you're going to cut it at an angle to create one side of the heart. It's really easy to do. And then just kind of turn it until it looks good to you. Figure out how you want to place it. You're going to be applying some glue and then just placing it just like this. So when you use the super glue gel, you only need to use a tiny little bit. It might help you to use a sewing pin or a little piece of wire to apply it too. But I'm just going to go ahead and dip it lightly into the super glue and then press it on. I'm going to make sort of an open V shape for this one, and then I'll just pinch it at the bottom there. If you want, you could use needle nose pliers to pinch this shut and hold it. You do need to hold it for a few seconds for the glue to set, and this is also why you don't want to use a lot of glue. If you put too much, it will take a really long time to set and it will slip around. If you put the right amount, it should be set in just a few seconds. So that one is ready, and you do want to set it aside and make sure that it is nice and firm before you go on to the next step. This is step 2, and in this step, we'll be applying the first layer of cotton. So here we have the armatures that we made in the last step, and they are now ready for the first layer of cotton. I'll show you two that I did ahead of time. This is what you can expect to have at the end of this step. So you can see the Q-tips inside and turn it around, and there's just a nice first layer of cotton there. It's not completely smooth, but we will be adding a little more cotton in later steps. So I'm going to put these aside and show you how we do that. Now, here's the cotton that came in the kit. And when you start to work with this cotton, you'll notice that it kind of comes off in sheets. So what we're looking for to make these is something about this size at first. It's maybe about an inch wide and 2 inches long or so, a nice little thin piece. And I sometimes like to just kind of tug it in my fingers like this and spread it out like that. We're going to get a piece like this to start. If you haven't made your glue wash yet, now is the time to do that. Again, it's 1 part of white glue and 4 parts of warm or hot water. Put it in a jar, put the lid on, and shake it up really well until you get a nice, even consistency. It'll sort of remind you of the consistency of milk, I'd say. If you have too much glue, your pieces will have a more plasticky finish than a fibery texture. So you want to make sure that you don't use too much glue. So let's get started with this one here. Before we apply any of this cotton, we're going to need to wet the armature just on the top of the cotton swabs with a little bit of the glue wash. When you're working with the glue wash, you never want to use so much that it's dripping down onto your hands. You do maybe want to keep a little towel handy to wipe your hands with because it can get a bit sticky. But you do need to have a kind of a good soaking of every area of the cotton to begin with. Now you're going to go ahead and apply the dry cotton. I'm starting at the bottom here where the two ends of the Q-tip meet at the point of the V. And at first, I'm just going to use my fingers and wrap it around like this. I'm smoothing it in the back. Now I'm kind of twisting it in my hands. You really just want to put a nice thin layer down at first. At the bottom, I'm going to hold it like this and twist it in my hands a bit, kind of pat it down. And now we're ready to put a little bit of glue wash on. So I've got a number 12 brush here. When you apply the glue wash, you want to go in the direction that you applied the cotton. If you start going that way against the way that I applied the cotton will come off. So I'm going to put a nice light touch, not too much, but enough that it sort of soaks it through to the layer underneath. Starting again at the bottom here. And then what I like to do is use the sides of my brush to start pushing that down to form the heart shape. It's going to get a little more glue wash. And you can see already it's looking like a heart. I'm going to keep applying some cotton now to kind of sculpt and shape it. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing again. And I'm going to pay attention to areas that might need a little more. Twisting it on like that. Just have a nice light touch. And I'm going to pick the glue wash up again. It's really handy working with the Q-tips because it has a natural handle for you to hold onto. These are really small, so if it didn't have that, it would be a bit tricky. So if you have a lot of cotton at the top there when you do this, you can pull some off, but just be really gentle about it. Now I'm going to start patting that down. And remember, these will have a front and a back as well. So if one side doesn't look as smooth as the other side, that's fine. You'll use that for the back. Okay. So the lobes of the heart. If you put too much glue wash on when you dry your piece, it might start to become wrinkly. And right now it looks kind of smooth, but if it's too wet when you take it out of the oven, sometimes it will scrunch up. That's okay if that happens. You can just cover it up with more cotton. But if that does happen to you, that is probably why. All right, so this has a nice first coat of cotton. You can see that it already looks like a heart. Um, right here, it seems a little bit uneven, so you can work on that now. I'll just put one more tiny little piece on before I put it in the oven. So I'm going to make a little patch for that side by putting it on top of itself and then tearing it into kind of the shape that I want. And these are really small, so you just need a little bit. I'm going to put it right here on this side. You can see I'm going to use my fingers to start patting it down a little bit and then very light touch with the glue wash again. And use your brush to kind of shape and sculpt it. And you'll see that the hearts are kind of on an angle on the stick. Later, when we remove them from the stick, we'll cut like that to make it nice and even. So you kind of have to visualize what the finished heart will look like. Check the back too. You do want to make sure that it's smooth enough that you can put your pin back on if you're going to make a pin. You can also use your fingers and press down just a little bit, apply a little bit of pressure, and that can help you smooth out any bumps. So this one is ready to dry. And here's my drying tray. I'm just going to put it on the tray. The side that I like the best right now, I'll face that up. So eventually that would become the front of my pin. So I'm going to put it down like that. And this will need to dry completely before you go on to the next step. So it will probably take somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes at 200 degrees in a kitchen oven. You can just leave it on the countertop to dry or put it on a heater. If you have radiative heat, you can put it on top of that. Um, if you live in a hot climate, you could put it out in the sun to dry. But my preferred method, because I like things to move quickly, is in the kitchen oven, 200 degrees. So that one's ready. I'll do one more. And I do want to recommend the way that I like to work is to work in batches. So if you are going to sit down and make 6 of these right now, you might want to do 6 to this point and then go on to the next step. That's the way I like to work. So I'm going to pick one of these and just do one more for you so you can watch this. This is probably the trickiest part of the whole project. So again, you're going to lightly wet the cotton swab ends with the glue wash. And now I'm going to go into the cotton, find a piece that looks good. You can really build these up to whatever size you really like by just continuing to apply more and more layers. For this project, we're going to do about 2 layering and drying processes, but you can continue on and make them as big as you like. So again, I'm going to kind of hold it gently with my finger on the back and just turn it around. Use my fingers to smooth it. And then I like to go to the bottom where the 2 ends meet, twist that. That really secures it on. And this one has kind of a lot of cotton at the top. So look, I'm going to pinch it between my fingertips right there so I don't pull all the cotton off. And that'll allow me to pull away just a little bit. And we'll be left with something a little more manageable. All right, so this is my number 12 filbert tip again with some glue wash. And now I'm going to start creating the top of the heart. It really kind of feels like magic how it just starts to look like a heart right away. You can leave it just like this too if you like. Some of the ones that I have on here, these smaller ones, have probably only 1 layer of cotton. They're still really cute like that. And then one like this has been built up probably 3 or 4 layers. Okay, so I'm going to add just a little bit more on this one. If one of your tops of your heart is kind of pointy, you can use your brush and just apply a little bit of pressure with that. You can really use the brush as a sculpting tool. You can also use your fingers if you're comfortable with that. It does get a little bit messy, but that works also. Like down here, I'm going to give it a little pinch to even out the sides. And this one needs another piece of cotton. Let's see. I'm going to use this one here. If at any point it becomes uncomfortable to work with because it's too sticky, you can just dry it and then keep going once it's dry. So there's the cotton. It's already wet, so it sticks right to it. And just going to twist it around. There we go. Do the bottom again. And I'm moving kind of in an upward motion here because I can see that's the way the cotton's going. So I'm going to move my brush like that and over. And there we are. Make sure to define the middle. And that's the back. This side looks good too, though. That could be the front easily. All right. So this one now is ready to dry. And you can see I have 2 that are like very different shapes. This one's a little wider and rounder. That one's a little longer and narrower. You can use your brush to sculpt the shape that you like and add more cotton if you want a thicker, rounder one, or add more down if you like a pointier one. But these two will now go in the oven at 200 degrees until they're completely dry, and then we'll go on to the next step. This is step three, and in this step, we'll be attaching the pin posts as well as applying a second layer of cotton. So here are two that have come out of the oven that are totally dry, and now they're ready for the next step. You could absolutely go ahead and say, these are done, and paint them as they are. Or if you want to build them up a little bit, you can apply a little more cotton. If you want to smooth them out a little bit, apply a little more cotton. And if you do want to turn your hearts into a pin, now is the time to add the pin posts. So I'll show you what that will look like. This is one that has a pin post attached, and to further secure it, we are going to apply a little bit more cotton after we apply this. So I'm going to set these two aside and pick one of these up. So again, we're going to use the super glue. I've got that ready here. This is the first way that we're going to secure the pin post. If you want to use the pin post, go ahead and get one out now. And you do want to put it pretty much right in the center of the back of your heart, because when you attach the pin back later, you'll be able to hide that if you want to look at it from the front and not see that. So put the pin post pretty much in the center. If it helps you to mark it with pencil, you can do that. We're going to cover it up with cotton. Um, so this, you're going to need the super glue. And I only like to use a tiny little bit again. So just a tiny little dot right on the pin post, and place that down. I'm going to do it on the table so I can apply some pressure. If you want to use needle nose pliers at this point to hold it in place, you can do that as well. But I'm applying a gentle pressure just for a few seconds to allow the glue to set. So that one's now ready to apply the layer of cotton. I'm going to set this aside because we don't need that right now. And now I'm going to show you how to finish this off and secure this a little bit further. So we're going to need the glue wash again and some more of the cotton fill. And this is just similar to the last step, except we're going to start on the back now. And I'm making a little patch that will go over this. The pin will poke through, and we're going to fold it around on each side. So it doesn't really need to be big at all. All right, this is probably about the size that we want. And before we put that on, we're going to just do a little bit of glue wash. I'm going to put it everywhere on the heart because I'm going to put another full layer of cotton on mine. Press this through, and you can start by folding it over with your fingers, twisting it just like we did in the last step. You do want to make sure that you push it down so you expose as much of this pin post as possible. That way your back will be able to secure to the post. So I've got kind of a little bit too much glue wash there. Wipe a little bit of that off and go around just like the last step now. And this is the part where you can decide how big you want your heart to be. Sometimes if I'm not getting a good shape by now, I'll just keep building it up, and that's when they'll get bigger and bigger. If I have a nice shape for a small heart, this one looks pretty good to me, then I won't continue on building it up. But go to the back, use your brush to apply a pressure to push the cotton all the way down to the base of the pin post. Okay, we're going to smooth that to a point. And now you just want to look at the symmetry. They don't have to be totally symmetrical at all. You can really make them however you like. But I like to check the symmetry, and I can see this side is a little wider than that side. I think it's really cute like that, but I'll go ahead and add a little more cotton just so I can show you how to do that. When I'm working off camera, I like to keep this cotton on my leg. I keep it on my upper thigh on my left leg because I'm right handed, and it will grip to your pants. That way you can easily pull pieces off. It's a little bit more difficult when it's on the table because it's slippery. But if you put it on your pant leg, you can just easily pull some pieces off. So there we go. This piece is ready now. I'm going to do the same thing we've been doing. And you really just want to work with this until you're happy with the shape. So I'm going to put the brush down right in the middle. This is kind of a round shaped patch of cotton. And I'm using the index finger on my left hand to hold it just very gently in place so I don't pull the cotton off when I use the brush. There we go. I like to go from the center out and around. You want to make sure that you don't have any pockets of air. They are slightly squishy. They will have some give to them, the finished heart, but you do want to make sure you don't have like a big bubble of air underneath your cotton. So the amount of pressure that you're applying with the brush is, I'd say, just enough to secure the layer of cotton that you're applying to the layer underneath. And you can go to the back and tidy it up a bit. And this is looking pretty good to me. Don't worry too much about the bottom. Just make sure that you get it nice and secure to the stick down there. But if you have cotton that's coming down the stick, that doesn't matter. We're going to cut that off. And you can use your fingers to shape it too. So I'd say this one is ready to dry. I'm going to put it again on my drying tray. And since it has the pin back, that kind of props it up nicely so it can get some air behind it. So I'm going to set that one aside, and I'll do one more. This is the one that I put the pin back on earlier. And I'll just do that one more time so you can watch again. A little bit of glue wash. I'm going to make my cotton patch. This piece here looks pretty good. I would say start with smaller pieces and do more smaller pieces than a bigger piece. It's a little bit trickier to apply it and get a nice smooth finish if you have a really big piece of cotton to begin with. So I would go for more smaller pieces rather than trying to cover the whole thing up at once. And if you are going to do what I just did, which is tear a little away, make sure you're holding it down very gently with another finger when you do that so you don't tear the whole piece off. Okay, now I'm at the top, and just going to fold that over to the back. There we go. Make sure again that you're exposing as much of this post as you can so the back can have something to catch a hold of. And if you're not going to use the pin post, you just do the same thing that you did in step one and build up your heart until you get the shape and size that you like. All right. So this one looks ready to dry as well. So I'm going to put this along with the other one in my oven again at 200 degrees, and they'll take about 5 to 10 minutes again. And you do want to make sure that it's totally dry. Everybody's oven is going to be a little bit different, so you may need to leave it in there longer. I would definitely check it after 3 minutes if you haven't done it before, just to make sure that your oven isn't really hot and it's burning. So let these dry completely, and then we'll be ready for the next step. This is step 4, and in this step, we'll be trimming the hearts off of the posts and touching them up. So here are two of the hearts that we did earlier on, and they're dry. They've had a second coat of cotton. This one has a pin post attached. This one doesn't. So the next thing that we're going to want to do is to remove them from this Q-tip post. We don't need that anymore. And to do that, you're going to need your wire cutters, and you may find it helpful to mark it out with a pencil. You can see here on this one, the way that the heart is angled, that to finish it off, it would probably be a shape like this, right? So you're going to want to make your cut right there. And all you need to do is just mark where you want it or not. You can eyeball it and just make a nice clean cut. So after you cut it, you will expose some of the Q-tip paper under there, and we're going to want to cover that up before we paint it. I'm going to do the same thing to this one. This one is a little bit wonky. The side's down a little bit longer than the other side. So you can correct that if you want by trimming off a little bit more on that side. And here's the wire cutters. I'm going to make sure you get one nice clean cut. Don't cut too high up. You can always cut more off, but it's a little bit more difficult to put it back on. If you do make a mistake and you cut too much off, you can absolutely go ahead and build it up with cotton. So I guess this is one of the instances where if you take too much off, you can put it back. So I'm going to trim right under the line that I made. And since we're going to be painting these, it doesn't matter if you can see some of the pencil. All right, so these are now ready to touch up. You can almost shape it a little bit with your fingers too, especially when you put some glue wash on. So before these are ready to paint, we're going to cover up that paper from the Q-tip. I'll show you one that I've covered right here, and this one is not covered yet. All you need to do this, it's really simple, is just a tiny little piece of cotton. So I'm going to just take a little piece, and to build up the thickness, I like to tear it away and layer it. And then you'll get something like this. You're creating like a little patch. And you can kind of take some of the edges away if you want. So I'll start with this one here. And you're going to need to put just a little bit of glue wash there. And then cover it with the patch that you created. Make sure you don't drag it off with your brush. You can hold it with your other finger. And you really don't want to use a lot of glue wash right now. Okay, so I've covered that up. This part can get a bit messy, but that one is ready. Unless you want to change the shape or build up the size, this is ready to go in the oven. So here's the drying tray again. I'm going to place this one onto the tray. This will only take a few seconds to dry, really, maybe like 30 seconds or a minute, because it was just that one small little patch. I'm going to put that aside, and I'll go ahead and do another one. This one has kind of like a little bit of dent at the bottom, a little bit of a dent. And when I patch it, I'm going to cover that up too. You do want to keep in mind that we are going to put the banners on these hearts. So if yours isn't perfect, it doesn't really matter. You'll cover that up with the banner or charms or a bow, whatever you want later on. And they're all different, and none of them are perfect. So I'm going to make another little patch. This one's a little wider on that side than this side too. So I'm going to put the majority of the cotton from the patch on this side. After I cover the paper, I'll fold it over that side just to bulk that one side up a little bit. Okay. The ones with the pin posts are a little bit easier to work with because you can hold the pin post. You could also use a needle nose plier and hold the pin post. Okay, so I'm going to add just a little bit more right there because it looks a little uneven. Once you put the trim around the outside too, the point on the bottom doesn't really show as much. So it's not really necessary to do this, but I'll show you how to do it. Okay, just the same as we've been doing. All right, And I'd say this one now is ready to go in the oven and dry along with this one. So again, I'm going to put those in at 200 degrees for a minute or two, or however long it takes for them to dry. If you did put more cotton on in this step, it will obviously take a bit longer. These are ready to go in the oven to dry, and then we'll go on to the next step. This is step 5, and in this step, we'll be making the banners for the hearts. And before we get started on making our banners, I just want to show you some examples that I've done using the kit. So everything that is on these hearts comes in the kit. There's 32 different quotes to choose from, and some are a bit longer than others. Some are just one word, and I think they're up to 3 or 4 words. So you can look through and decide what you want to use. If you don't want to use what came in the kit, you can make your own. You could use a piece of old book paper or print something out to customize it however you like. And these are just some examples of what I liked. All right, I'm going to put these aside now. And the first thing that we need to do now is to get our piece of cotton felt. And this is what we're using to create the base of the banner. And we're going to decoupage the quotes on top of that. The cotton felt is something that I made. It's a piece of cotton batting that is saturated with glue wash and then dried until it's firm. If you don't have cotton felt, you could use just paper for these, or a piece of ribbon or another piece of fabric. So the piece of felt that came in the kit is 2 by 3 inches, and we're going to cut them out 3-inch lengths and a 1/4 inch width. With the quotes here, I marked each line a 1/4 inch apart. So each quote will be a 1/4 inch wide, and we're going to need a 1/4 inch piece of the cotton felt to attach the quote to. So we're going to mark out and cut out enough of these for however many hearts you have. So I'm going to get the ruler here, and I'm going to mark on what I think is the back of the cotton felt. This part is a little smoother, so I'm going to use this as the front, and then I'm going to make my marks on the back. So I'm going to go a 1/4 inch down. All right. I have my pencil here. It's going to mark a 1/4 inch. I'm just going to do a few because this is pretty self-explanatory, but mark out maybe 2 of them. And then I go to the other side, do the same thing. It's going to mark out 2. And then use the ruler to draw the straight line all the way across. You don't want to use marker for this probably because it might bleed through to the other side. Okay. So once you've marked those out, you don't really need the ruler anymore. And you can go ahead and use your fabric scissors and go ahead and cut out a piece. And you're just going to want to cut as many as you're doing at that time. So I'm going to set that aside. And here are a couple that are ready to attach quotes to. So once you've picked out what you like, you can go ahead and cut that out as well. And here I have one that I cut out. I chose Be It Remembered. I'm going to do another one. Let's see. Maybe I'm going to like a shorter one. Here's Always, maybe. Just cut right along the lines. If you can see a little bit of the guideline on your quote once you cut it out, I think that's totally fine because it's really faint. And once you attach it to the banner, you don't really notice that. But if there's a little bit too much on there for your liking, you can go ahead and trim it off a little bit. All right, so we have 2. And at this point, you might want to decide which of your hearts you're going to use which one on. Sometimes a bigger heart will be better for a longer quote. But really, any of these quotes that I chose for this kit can go on any size heart. Here I have a small one that has a longer quote on it. The next thing that we need to do to create the banners is to attach the quote to the cotton felt. So you can see I'm leaving down here about a half an inch, and this will enable you to fold it over and make the tails of your banner. So I'm going to use the Elmer's glue for this and just lightly apply a coat about a half an inch from the end to the length of your quote. And I'm going to trim off each end of this to make it kind of as short as possible because these are small. If you have a bigger heart, you could leave this whole long length if you want a nice wide banner, but mine are on the small side. So I'm going to trim right next to the lettering pretty much. Just leave maybe like a 16th of an inch of space there. And then just place it on like that. Again, leaving about a half an inch on this side to fold over and make the tails. And I like to press it down. Sometimes what I like to do is flip it over and press it down onto my work surface because that way, if I have any glue or paint on my hands, it won't get on the quote and it gives you a nice even surface to help get a good application. All right, so that one's on with the glue. I'm going to just glue another one. And again, this one's a little bit shorter since it's just one word, so I might leave a little bit more space on the sides here. It really just, one went into my glue, but that's okay. It really just depends on the size of your heart. So you're going to want to kind of customize these according to the size of your hearts. And then we'll use the white glue again and start about half an inch from the end. Just put a little bit on, pick it up. There we go. And if it goes off to the sides, that's totally fine because we're going to cover everything with Mod Podge anyway. Sometimes if you're doing a short one, you might be able to get two pieces on one length here. You could probably put a short quote here and another one down there. So again, I'm going to flip that over, press it down to secure it. And you're going to want to let these dry completely. Now, here are some that have already dried completely, and I'm going to put a layer of Mod Podge on this one because this one doesn't have Mod Podge. These have been adhered to the cotton felt with the Elmer's glue, and then they have been coated with a layer of Mod Podge to seal them. And the Mod Podge that I'm using is matte. You could use gloss if you like a shinier finish. So these are ready for the next step, but this one has not had Mod Podge on it. So I'm just going to put quickly a little thin coat of Mod Podge on here. I'm going to do that right on my drying tray so I don't get any Mod Podge on my work surface. And you need to put this on and let it dry completely once you've done the coating. You can do kind of a thick coat that will give a little more rigidity to your banner as well. You just don't want to overdo it. But if you see kind of a white layer of Mod Podge, that's totally fine. You can let these dry naturally, or you can put them in the oven with the same method that you used for the hearts. So around 200 degrees, and that'll probably just take a minute. All right, so these have already been Mod Podged and they are ready to go on to the next part of this process, which is to make the tails and then fit them to your heart. And the first thing that I'm going to do with this is just kind of cut one side off to make it even. It just makes it a little bit easier to deal with. We're going to use the super glue for this part, so you're going to need that. And I like to use a pin to apply the super glue for this step. So I'm going to keep that right there. You could also use a little piece of wire if you have that. Now, what you're going to do is find the edge of your paper and you want to kind of give it a seamless look. So you don't want to just see the edge of the paper. You want to fold it right at the edge. That way it looks like one continuous piece. If you want to age this a little bit, you could wash it with coffee before you put the Mod Podge on, coffee or tea a little bit to give it a little bit of age. So I just fold it over maybe about an eighth of an inch like this, and then fold it again. So we have something like that. I'm not gluing it down yet, and I'm not trimming it yet. So once we have that, I'm going to get the glue, the super glue, just a little bit with the wire or pin, and I'm going to apply just a very thin little dab of it right there to secure that part of the banner. And I really like working with the super glue gel. It's a lot easier to manage than typical liquid super glue, and it sets really quickly. That's why I use this all the time. So then I'm going to put some here and secure it like that. It's kind of like a zigzag. I'm still not going to trim the ends. I'm going to do the other side first. The same thing that we did there. And if you want to get fancy, you could do more than one fold. This is one fold. So I'm going to mimic what I did, about an eighth of an inch. That just gives it like a little bit of depth when it's on the heart to do the fold. Okay, so we have that. And then we're going to put the glue there and there. Just a little bit there. And then a little bit in that part as well. All right. Once you have that secure and the glue set, you can cut the little V shape in the tail of your banner. So you could leave these a little bit longer if you like that look, or cut them shorter. But what I like to do if you're not comfortable with going ahead and making the V cut is you can practice a little bit if you leave it a little longer. So you can start with it longer and make a snip, and you try to make it symmetrical. You could also draw it with lightly with pencil if you like. So you can see how that turned out. And then I'm going to go ahead and try to mimic that on the other side. Like I said, if you start with a longer one, if you're not happy with the look that you get that first time, you can cut it again and make it a little shorter. So that looks pretty good. I'm going to try that on this heart right here. There we go. And that seems to be fitting pretty well. So I kind of like the long tails on that one. I'm going to leave that one like that. This banner is ready to go for the next step. I'm going to set it aside. Then I'll do one more so you can see that again. And you don't have to cut this part off right now, but I find it easier to work with if it's a little bit shorter. I'm going to fold it back about an eighth of an inch and then fold it again on itself. There we have that. And now it's time for the glue. Tiny bit there, tiny bit there. Just give it a little squeeze. You want to make sure that you get your banner tail kind of straight out, or if you want it at an angle, now's the time to do it. You can angle it up, you could angle it down before you squeeze it, but I like mine to be kind of right in line, so I'm going to keep it like that and then squeeze it. And now I'm going to do the other side, same thing. Okay. There we go. You only want to do an eighth of an inch. If you do more back here, then it doesn't fold over the heart as easily. If it's kind of bulked up in the back by a longer fold under there, it won't rest as flat on the surface of the heart. Okay, so I'm going to do the glue just a little bit there and there. And with this one, I want to show you something else once I cut the V's. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and cut one side. That looks good. Really, the trick to this is to have nice sharp scissors. It doesn't work if your scissors aren't sharp. And just pay attention to the angle that you're going in at. If you look at the piece that you're cutting away, that will help you determine if it's going to be even or not. All right, there we go. Now, the thing that I wanted to show you is sometimes the ends of this material are a little soft And maybe if you're using this as a pin, that isn't ideal. So I like to correct that by using the super glue on a pin, and I'll just do kind of a coating of super glue, and that will set, and then this will become really stiff and rigid. I don't like to do that on the whole thing because I do want it to be somewhat flexible so I can wrap it around the heart. But if you want to make sure that your ends aren't going to fray or break off, this is a good thing to do. You could probably use the white glue as well, but since we have the super glue out and it dries so fast, I like to use that. And this is already dry, and you can see now it's really rigid. Okay. So that is everything that you need to do to make the banners. And now we're ready to go on to the next step, which will be painting the hearts. This is step 6, and in this step, we'll be painting the hearts. So here I have two different styles of hearts. I have one that's a pin and one that I'm going to turn into a charm or an ornament. So it does not have a pin back. They're both totally dry and ready for painting. And the paint that I'm using today is watercolor. This is a really messy palette that I've been working off of to get all these different colors of reds. I have some pink in there, but you can really choose whatever color you like. And since these are so small, they do get a bit messy when you paint them. But I'm going to show you a little trick. I like to use a pin again and insert it in the top. So this would be between where the Q-tips were. You can easily insert that right into the top there. And then you have a nice little holder. The one with the pin post on it already, you can hold it by the pin post. But I do find it still tidier to put a pin in and do it like that. So you don't get your hands covered and you can paint easily. What I have here for the paint is some coffee. If you like a more aged look, you can mix your paint with coffee rather than water or some plain water. And I like kind of a vintage look. You can see how this looks here. I mix this with some coffee. And with the watercolor paint, that will give you sort of this mottled finish you see here. If you use an acrylic paint and you don't water it down, you'll get a really opaque finish. And I think you'll lose some of the texture of the cotton. If you do want to use acrylic paint, I would recommend watering it down just a little bit with either some coffee or some water, depending on what color you're going for. When you paint it, you might find that you want to do several coats because you'll end up with something a little bit splotchy, and maybe that's not the look that you're going for. So you may want to apply a couple of coats, but the splotchy kind of aged look can be really pretty too. You can see this one here. And that way they're all really different and unique. Just depends on what you're hoping your finished heart will look like. So I'm going to go ahead and paint these two, and I'm going to use the coffee. I have here some red mixed in with a little bit of purple, some orange. I just kind of mix and match. I like mine to be a little bit warm, a little bit aged looking, so I'm going to use some orange and mix that in with the coffee. And you don't want your watercolor to be too watered down, or else you'll get a really thin and splotchy coat. So I try to get a nice kind of thicker watercolor. I'm going to add a little bit of burnt sienna. All right, this looks good to me. You can do whatever color you like. So here is the heart with the pin, and you can see how that looks with the watercolor. If you get it on the pin back, that's totally fine. It's watercolor. You can wipe it off later if you like, but you can't really see it once it dries. All right. This is really all you need to do. Make sure you get in there. And if it's twisting around on the pin, you can kind of hold it down with your finger too. I don't think you're going to come away from this project with clean hands. You'll have some paint and definitely some super glue. Okay. So that is a nice coat, you can see. And again, I like to dry these in my oven because I like things to go quick. So I'm going to put it on the drying tray, still on the pin. And these pins, if you use this style of pin, they have a plastic head. So you definitely don't want to put it in a really hot oven because that will start to melt. So 200 degrees works just fine. I like to set it like that. And I'll just do one more with you. This one does not have the pin back. If you want to do it a little more pink, you could add a little bit of white. Really, you can do whatever color you like. And I actually like them white. If you like that more neutral kind of a look, you could leave the raw cotton and just maybe brush on a little bit of coffee to give it some age. Get creative. I'm really excited to see what everybody makes with this. Okay. So I'm holding it with my finger again. And the pinhole is so small that when you do remove the pins, you're not even going to notice it. Also, you'll most likely be covering that up with some trim there if that's what you want. Okay. So there's a nice coat on that one. If these come out of the oven and you're not happy with the finish, you can put another coat on if you like. So I'll just show you. Maybe you see something like that and that's not for you. You can just go ahead back and fill that in a little bit. Usually, the most that it would take to get like a more solid coating of paint would be 2 coats of the watercolor. Once these are totally dry, you do have the option of spraying them with a spray sealant as well. You can use any kind of matte spray sealant. I'm not going to do that on the camera because of the fumes, but if you are going to seal these, you want to do it outside. That would be if you use watercolor. If you use acrylic, it's not necessary because that is a water repellent paint. Okay. So there's another coat on that one to give it a little more uniform appearance. So that's all you need to do to paint the hearts. And once they're dry, they are ready for the next step. And in that step, we're going to be putting the banners on the hearts and putting some of the gold trim on as well. This is step 7. And in this step, we'll be adding the metallic trim to the outer edge of your heart, as well as attaching the banners. So the first thing that we're going to need to do is to attach the metallic trim to the outer edge of the heart. And this is the smaller antique gold trim that came in the kit. You could really use anything that you have for this. Here I have one that I did that has uh, antique glass seed bead trim. So you can find some really nice things. I personally like to try to source vintage and antique materials for this because I think it just gives them a really nice, unique look. All right, so that's one's going to go back in there. This here, the ones with the gold are the same trim that came in the kit. So before the banner goes on, we need to do the trim. And you don't want to cut it. I just like to work from one long piece. That way you use just as much as you need. This is antique, so it's kind of hard to source. It's scarce. So I like to try to not waste any of it. And what we're going to do is start out at the top, wrap it around, and then end up there and cut it off there. And the way we're going to attach this is again with super glue. So this part is going to get a little bit sticky probably. I found that each heart is going to need anywhere from about 2 to 2.5 inches of this gold trim to wrap around the outside. But like I said, you don't want to cut it ahead of time. I just cut from the one long piece continuously. And I'm going to start with the glue and apply a little dot at the top here, just a tiny bit, very little bit. You might want to use the wire or the pin to do that. And the first thing that I like to do is just put a little bit there and get it started by securing the one end. So I'm going to hold that down. You can hold it with your finger or a pin, or sometimes I like to use one of these, which is a clay needle, and you can just put that right on there if you don't want to get glue on your fingers. I like to get a nice secure start there. So that is attached now. And now we're going to continue on with the super glue. I'm going to squeeze a little bit out and I'm going to use a pin for this and go along this entire edge now with create a thin line of the super glue. You want to go in the middle of the heart. You don't want it to go towards the back or towards the front. Try to aim for the middle. If it goes a little bit towards one side, it's better looking if it goes towards the front. If it starts going towards the back, then it's wrapping around the side and you won't be able to see it as much. So I'm going all the way down to the end and onto the tip. Now I'm going to just kind of stretch it around. This is a twist cord. So if you start to do this, it's going to untwist, and instead you might want to twist the other direction to maintain that twist in the cord as you're applying it. Just make sure you're not unraveling it. And I'm holding it up here, even though it is secure from super glue, I'm pulling a little bit here just to get a nice straight, even application. Look how pretty that looks. It's the antique material that really gives it that look. Okay, so I'm going to kind of squeeze at the end there, and now it's ready to do the other side. Now this I'm going to do in 2 more motions as well. So it's like 4 different um, applications of glue to finish this off. So I'm going to go using it straight from the tube. Oops, I did a little bit too much. That's probably why you shouldn't do it straight from the tube, right? That's fine. A banner is going to go there anyway. So, all right. So I'm going to go all the way almost to the end, but I'm going to leave a little bit. I'm just going to do right to the top of that bump. And same thing, I'm going to hold it on with this finger, pull it a little bit, and I'm making sure I'm not untwisting it like I showed you before. I'm going to maintain that twist. It's prettier when it's twisted. Okay. Just hold that in place for a few seconds. It dries really fast. You could probably use white glue for this, or you could even use a needle and thread and sew it on, but the super glue works so well that you don't really need to. So now we're to the point of needing to cut it off. And the way that I like to determine where to cut it off is just push it in with my fingernail and kind of make a little dent in it, and you'll see. That way you don't cut too short of a piece or too long of a piece. I kind of just shape it and it'll maintain that shape of it because it is metallic. And then I'm just going to cut right there. If anything, cut it a little longer than shorter. But really, you can, if you do make a mistake there, you can hide it with a bow or a charm. So I'm going to put a little bit more glue. I'm going to use this again. You could use a pin, like I said, a wire. Actually, I'm going to use my fingernails for this. There we go. Just make sure you really secure that. Use as little super glue as possible the entire time, and then you will lessen your chances of gluing your fingers to it as well. So now that the metallic thread is on the outside, we're ready to attach a banner to this one. And I'm going to pick one out. Let's see. There we go. This one is a Rolling Stones lyric. I kind of tried to include a bunch of different styles of quotes. So we have some Shakespearean style, some that are really simple and sweet, and then some that might be a little more trendy. All right, so then you kind of pick how you want it to go. I like this one going at a slight angle like this, I think. So what I'm going to do is put a little dot of super glue again and kind of rub it across the heart in the direction that I want the banner to go. Don't go all the way around the sides yet. So I place that on, holding it down. You can wrap it around. You can see I'm applying some pressure and kind of rounding out the surface of the banner. But if you like yours to look straight across, you don't have to mold it to the shape of the heart. And then what I like to do is just check back here on the edges to see. Now on this side, I'm going to put a little bit in there just to further secure it to the heart because this one is a pin and it will get a little bit of wear and tear. So I'm going to hold that on again. And now this one is finished basically. If you like, in the next step, I'm going to show you how to um, attach some charms and ribbons. You can do that to the ornament style or the charm style hearts. And then this is a pin that has some charms and a ribbon, but in this case, this could be totally finished if you like the simple look and it's ready for a pin back. This is step 8, and in this step, we'll be adding ribbons, hangers, and charms to the hearts. So here is a heart that's finished like we did in the last step. This one does not have a pin back, so I'm planning to turn this one into an ornament. And I'm going to do the same thing that you see here on this one, attach a piece of the hand-dyed silk ribbon and one of the little brass skeleton keys, as well as some of this gold, antique gold thread for a hanger. If you want to use this as an ornament for a feather tree, that works really well. You could put it on a necklace as a charm or make something like I did with this pin cushion here and attach one like that. So this is if you want to do the charm or ornament version. I'm going to pick out some ribbon, and in your kit, you have a yard of the hand dyed ribbon, which sort of has an ombre look to it. And I like to do my ribbon like that. That way, you have choices of color, and I think the variation of color looks really pretty. So, this is a 1/4 inch silk ribbon that I dyed, especially for this kit. And if you are planning on making 6 hearts and you want all 6 of your hearts to have a bow, then you're going to cut your ribbon into 6 inch pieces. That way you'll have 6 of them since you have 3 yards. And I do want to show you this is a pin with a bow and some charms on it. So you can also put the bow on the pin. It doesn't just have to be for the ornament. So think about how many bows you want and then cut it into 6 inch pieces if you're going to do 6. So I'm just going to show you real quick how I tie one. Okay, so this is some 6 inch pieces that I cut ahead of time. And this one has some of the white on one end and a nice soft kind of seedless blue on the other end. I just leave about an inch on this side as a tail, fold it under and around, and pull that through. It's just tying a bow, but the silk ribbon is a little bit delicate, so you don't want to snag it. I try to be really gentle, and I don't pull all the way at first. I kind of gently pull the tails until I kind of get them the length that I want. And then I'll start to tighten up the bow once I get it how I want it to be. Okay. So there's a little bow. At this point, I'm not going to cut any off of the end because I like to attach it to my heart before I decide how I want the ends to look. All right, so we're going to use this heart here, and I'm also going to use one of the keys. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that. Now, ahead of time, I threaded my needle with 6 inches of the gold, antique gold thread that came in the kit. And this is a pretty sturdy needle. If you can get a thicker needle like this through, then that works well. So the way that I like to do this is just to put it, remember now we had the two Q-tips and there was kind of a hollow space in there. So it should go through pretty easily. I like to put it right under the gold trim and try to come out at the other side. You can see that there. You want to be careful not to poke your finger. So you get that through one time. I have not tied a knot in this yet. At this point now, I'm going to put the key on. Okay, so I have the key on, and you'll notice that the key is dimensional. So you want to put the side that has the dimension out. The back is hollow. These are stamped brass. Okay, so I like to go through twice. So I have the key hanging down there now, and I'm going to leave the back part of the thread just about as long as I want my hanger to be. I'm going to go back through the same hole, and you don't need to go through the key again. This way you can secure the key down to the heart. Okay, so the key is on, and I'm going to take the needle off now. Now you can watch me rethread the needle on camera. Hopefully that goes well. So now we have the key on. You could leave it like that if you just like the look with the key. You can really do whatever you like with this. You could use a super glue and put the key somewhere else. You could attach the key here, just whatever you like, really. I kind of like it when the key is dangling right in the middle like that. So now what I'm going to do is use the needle again. I'm going to rethread this. I'm going to try with both ends. Okay, so now I have the needle threaded on both ends of the gold thread, and I'm going to attach the bow. I'm just going to go, let me pick out the color that I like for this first. This is kind of a more turquoise one. I think I might do the lighter one that we made. Let me try this one. I think I like this one. Okay, so you can choose whatever you like. And then I just go right through the knot and pull that down. Now that is on. I'm still not cutting the ends off yet. Now I'm going to just tie a knot in the ends of the thread because I'm going to leave a little hanger on this. You can make these longer or shorter. The piece I started with was 6 inches. I probably should have made it a little bit longer than that, but this works too. Okay. There we go. So I have a knot, and now I'm going to just trim the ends off a little bit. And now I'm going to decide how I want my ribbon tails to look. If your ribbon is a little bit wonky and you want to change the position of the tails, you can also put like a tiny bit of super glue on it and kind of shape it how you want. You want to put one of the tails down like this, but I'm going to leave mine like it is and just go ahead and cut the ends on sort of an angle, just a small angle. I did cut some with a V shape here, but since the banner has a V shape on the ends, I didn't think that the V shape ribbon ends were necessary. You can see if you like that look, you could do it like that. But since I already have that happening here, I just like to leave it like that. Now, if you want to age your ribbon a little bit before you use it, you can dip it in coffee or tea and dry it. And if you don't like your ribbon being kind of wrinkled, because it will probably be a bit wrinkled when you get it, um, you can iron it. Just iron it on the silk setting if you want a nice smooth ribbon. This one's really pretty smooth and ironed looking. So you can do some things with the ribbon to customize it before you put it on your ornament by dyeing it with some tea, just dipping it in a tea or a coffee and then drying it, or ironing it. So there we have a finished ornament, which I think is so pretty. And now I'm going to show you quickly a couple different things that I like to do with these. They fit perfectly inside of a ring box. So these are some little brown craft paper ring boxes that I found online, and they have a little velvet backing that you can just push the pin back right down into. So this is the one that we made together earlier, and this is really a nice way to gift these. I think it just looks really striking against the black velvet. And then if you want to go even further with that, you can put some ribbon, some gold cord or thread on the outside of a package. And then here's one that I made into a charm and tied it on top of the package as a gift topper, which just looks really beautiful. And then again, of course, you could do something like this where I attached this one to my pin cushion. I think this is kind of funny because this one says, I'm going to put the key on so you can get a better look of the whole thing. Here I will hold. So it's holding your pins. So that's another thing that I came up with to do with these. I have another piece of ribbon here that I dyed with some tea and I just put it on a tiny little heart. And I think that looks really pretty. So these are just some different finishings for the hearts. And of course, you can take what you learned here and come up with your own ideas. And I can't wait to see what everybody makes. And I really hope that you enjoyed making them. And I hope that you enjoy gifting them to your friends and loved ones even more. We've reached the end of our project and our spun cotton hearts are finished. I hope that you learned some new techniques and enjoyed our time crafting together. I would love to see your creations, so please share them on social media and don't forget to tag me at Full Moon Wears. Thanks again, Lisa.